Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we'll talk about how the kivy handles the layout management. So basically, you can always position your widget using X and Y coordinates, but in every GUI toolkit, it's almost always better to use some kind of layout management that the toolkit provides. This allows the widget to resize and move appropriately as the user changes the window size. So in kivy, these things are layouts. So we have a multiple layout in the kivy, and some of the important layout are like grid layout, stack layout, float layout, and we'll just talk about them in detail. So if you have used wx python before, they are analogous to the wx python sizes. And also if you have done any android coding before, then you could see something that is a layout we have here, that is relative layout, linear layout. So instead of linear layout, we just have a box layout over here. And next thing is we have something that is a stack layout. So we'll read it all in the detail in this lectures and upcoming lectures. So first of all, let's talk about the box layout. So first of all, we have to just say that the kivy can do layout in the two different ways. So the first way is to do layout with Python code only, and the second way is to do the mixture of a Python and a kivy language. This is to promote the model view controller way of doing things. So it took kind of like CSS and remind us a little like wx python and xrc. So we'll look at it to use both of this method in this lecture and upcoming lecture, that is by using a standalone Python code and also the mixture of a Python and a kivy language. So in this lecture, we'll just focus on the box layout. So let's see how this box layout can be implemented using the layout management tool that is provided by the kivy. So let's get started. So first of all, let me show what the box layout is really about. So this is basically interface for our box layout. You can see we have a vertical layout over here, that is a portion which is the box layout, and you can also have a multiple part as in box layout over here as an orientation given vertical and horizontal. So basically you just fragment your layout or fragment your screen into the multiple fragment, and so basically you divide your screen into the multiple fragment either horizontally or vertically, and you just render your GUI widgets according to your need. So let's implement this box layout using the standalone Python code in our PyCharm. So first of all, let me just create a new Python script here, that is just going here Python file, and let me say it is a box layout, and let me just hit enter here, and we are good to go with our Python code. So first of all, as always, we'll just import kivy over here, and next is we'll just import random, and after that we'll just import the app in order to just run this build module which is at the top of this app. So let me just import, that is app module, from this kivy.app interface. And second is to use the UI, basically that is the button and a box layout. So in order to make use of this UI, you have to first use this kivy.uix.button. so we are just importing the button. So let me just type here button. So next is to implement or just use basically a box layout. So let me just say kivy.uix, and it should be box layout over here. Let me just type box layout first and just import me box layout. So we have imported the button and a box layout as in UIX that is needed for our app. So next thing is to just create the color code over here. So let me say the color code for red is 1 and O and O and 1. And similarly, I'll just make a quick color code for green, blue and purple, which will be basically all the element or all the color for our box layout fragment. So let me say 0101 over here, and next would be blue. So blue will be O and 1 and 1, and last I'll just say purple over here. So in the purple, the color will be 1 and O and 1 and 1. So let's create the class now. So class will be basically our horizontal box. Let me say it should be horizontal, the orientation should be horizontal, and let me say layout and example over here, and it should be inherited from the app class obviously, and we have done this multiple times before, that is using this app class in order to just make use of the method and attribute that is already defined in this app class by the programmer, that is basically developer of a kivy language. So basically this class, that is the box layout example class, this will render horizontally oriented box layout, and let me just define a build function in order to render that. So in here what you're gonna do is we'll just say basically this is for our horizontal box layout. So in order to just make this layout, we have to just define a layout variable and just call this box layout method, or the box layout basically, and class, which is basically layout, here is an object. And if you just make the object of any class, then you have to just give the attribute over here, that is padding. So let me say padding should be 10 over here. So if you just go in this description or in the declaration of this box layout, you could see in this init method is the method that is going to call when you just made this object, that is layout. And here what is needed is basically, and if you see here there is a padding, so we have just referred to this padding and in the form of the dictionary. That means we are just calling this padding and basically making an object of the box layout. So next thing is to just render this color. So let me just say colors here, and first of all let me just reference all of this color here, that is red first and green, and next would be blue over here, and last is a purple. So these are our list of colors. So next thing what we have to do is traverse through the tree. So I have already said you that in the layout basically all these widgets are basically placed in the tree, so in the form of tree. So that means you can traverse in that tree using the for loop. So I'll just say for I in range, and it should be 5 over here, and let me just make a button over here, so it would be 5 button. So let me just say button. So that is basically a button, which is a class referring to this button interface, and let me just call here with a text. So in this text I'll just say button, and let me format this button now. So basically formatting would be based on this color. So let me say button first here, and let me just give a hash and percentage yes in order to format, and let me just format with this percentage I plus 1 over here. So let me say I plus 1 and close this down, and let me just say that is black, that must be background color. So I'll say background color, which is our next variable that should be rendered, and it should be as in random dot choice. So let me say choice over here and give the color combination that is basically random to every, that is the part or fragment of the bottom. So if you just see the box layout over here, so we are just giving this every color to this horizontal layout randomly basically. So that means if you just see here again in this box layout, that means each of these fragment will have the different color combination using this color list. So over here let's close this down first. So basically what we have done here is we have rendered the color, and background color is basically an attribute, so that can be given to the button. So if you just go in this button again, that is a declaration of this button, then you could see in the init method you can just pass here as in background color, over here as in property, and basically it will be in the format of RGBA. And basically we have here format that is referring to RGBA, that is red, green, blue, and A is basically an addition color, which is purple over here. So we have just created a random choice of the color and rendered to the button randomly. So let's add this widget, that is basically a button, to our layout. So we have a layout which is in box layout. So making use of this object, let me just say add widget. So add widget is the method basically in order to just add a widget to any layout. So let me just add a button here, because we want to add this button to our layout, which is box layout. So let's return this layout from here. So let me just go over here and say return layout from here, that is from our build method. So next thing what you're gonna do is we'll just create our layout basically for the orientation. So let's just define that over here, and this is basically our app class. So in order to just inherit app class, I'll just say layout over here, and what we're gonna do is it is inheriting from our app. So basically this is whole for our layout, that is basically for our box, and that is for our app, and basically for our horizontal layout, and for this is basically in order to just run the app. So first of all here what we're gonna do is we'll just set a vertical orientation for our app. So basically if you see here, this is yes box layout example was for the horizontal, and yes box layout would be for the vertical, because in the box layout we have a two orientation, that is a vertical orientation and a horizontal orientation. So let's define first the set orientation method over here. So it should be set orientation, and let's define here as in self first, and just give here orient, that is in variable. So let's define that is self dot orient, and let me just give here orient as in orient. It should be orient, not t. So next thing is we'll just define, let me just put here orient and here t2. So we have defined the set orientation method in our vertical box layout class. So next is to just call the build in order to render all the widget to this vertical layout. So first of all, as always, we'll just define a layout which is basically instances of this box layout, and let's give the padding over here. So padding would be obviously a 10, same as for the horizontal layout. And the next is to just give a orientation here. So orientation is next attribute that can be given over here, and the orientation should be self dot orient, that is passed over here while calling this box layout. So next is to just traverse. So I'll just traverse in the range 5, that is basically number of button. So it will be 5 button over here. So let's create the button instances, that is using this button class, and let's put the text first, that is as a button, and let's define this button and just first format this button. So I'll just say button and format this, and basically it can be formatted by %x over here, and if you just type a %s, it should be over here as a %i+1. So basically it is same as saying just format me using the format function. So if you just see here, it is same as saying that is button, and basically format this using dot format statement. So you could do this too over here. So it should be formatted by i+1 over here. So next thing is we'll just render this layout, add this widget to the layout. So in order to add, we'll just make use of these instances of the box layout and call this add widget method, and let's add this button over here. And at last we'll just return, that is our layout from here, and we are done with this build method. Now we have to just run our, that is all of this method over here, and we'll just make use, that is in our name equal main. So let me say name first, and if it is equal main, then let me just first of all make the instances, that is app, of this yes box layout example, which is basically our horizontal layout. And next is I'll make the vertical app. So basically it will for the vertical, and let me just first of all run this app. So let me just type app here and run it over here by just calling this run. So if I just see over here, and if I first play this, basically I'll just go in this run and run the module, and it should be now box layout. And then if you just run this module, you could see all of this layout, and there are basically in 5 button, and each of have this random color rendered over here, and you could just see if you just touch over here, that is basically when the button is pressed. And when the button is pressed, nothing is happening because we haven't handled any event over here, but you could see that the color will pop up, and basically you have a button layout over here, which is a box layout. So you are rendering each of these widgets over here in the box layout as a fragment in the horizontal orientation. So what if we just want the vertical orientation? So for that, I'll just say, first of all, let's comment this out and let's run and know that that is creating this app instances for our vertical box layout. And now it's time to just run this app. So before that, what you can do is we'll just say app dot set orientation, and we have to just pass here a set orientation as in vertical. So orient should be, and let me just pass here as a vertical, and let's run this app now. Then you could see we'll just have now the app that is in the vertical orientation. So let me just play this button over here, and you could see we have an app that is basically rendered in a vertical box layout, and the button are rendered in the vertical manner. So previously we had something that is in horizontal, so now it's time that is we have rendered with the orientation that is vertical over here by using this bunch of a code of a Python in order to just render over here. And just look at it, it look really nice. So you can just comment it out, or you can also put something that is color over here, same as we have done over here. So let me just go over here, that is for the colors, and let's copy this first, and let me just put it down here after this button. So I'll just say that is just put me down the colors. So basically we don't have color over here, so we have to just define this color over here, that is just make use of this code. Just copy this down, and let me just put it in the build, and let me just paste it over here. And if I just play this now again, then you could see all of this code that is rendering this random color to all of this button. So this was basically due to this attribute where we have this text and background color. We have a multiple attribute that can be used in the button, and that can be on touch, unclick, listener even. So that will be covered in the next upcoming lectures. But before that, what I'm going to do in upcoming lectures are basically using the kivy language. So we have just used standalone Python code over here. We haven't used any kivy languages till now, but in the upcoming lectures we'll just make use of that kivy language and make our Python code smaller than before, because it will just rectify all of our code that is unnecessary over here, like just using this padding over here, or just using over this all of this code over here and adding this widget, or just defining the style basically for our widget can be done using the kivy language. So that can be covered in the upcoming lecture. But just for the explanation of this code, basically what we have created here is basically an vertically oriented layout or box layout class, and we have also created the horizontally oriented box layout class, and each class contains 5 buttons with a random background color, and the color follows RGBA over here. You can see the color combination, but can have the individual value that are between 0 and 1. So we can say if you use number greater than 1, the color becomes brighter. It happened to use something that is 255 over here. So basically instead of just 1, you can also use 255 when the creating basically this app. So if you happen to run this code and if you see something that is muted set of color, you could see that you can just replace this 1 by 255. So basically this was the color code combination. So next thing you can see over here, that is padding, that is an padding argument. So this padding argument tells kivy how much space there should be between the layout and its children, and basically you can see the spacing, and spacing argument tells that how much space there should be between the children. So that is difference between this padding and the spacing. So let me just repeat it for you once. That is padding argument tells kivy how much space there should be between layout and children. So if we just difference between layout and children, that means there will be the padding, but if the spacing is used, that means that should be the space between the children. So in order to create the button, we just make use of this simple loop over here, that is just looping over a small range of number, which is 5 over here, which is basically number of button. So each iteration creates a button with a random background color, and we can also add that button to the layout instances. Then we return the layout instances at the end. So for the vertical box layout part, it is basically slightly different than this horizontal box layout. The code is pretty much the same, except that we have to add the set orientation method over here. So you have to just note one thing, that if you just call the set orientation again, it will have no effect. So you need to just bind the orientation to the app orient properly, or use the kivy language to achieve this. So we have just concluded this lecture by just pressing this play button and seeing the output for our vertical orientation. And if you want to just see the output for the horizontal orientation, what you can do is just remove this hash over here, and let's remove this for the vertical layout, and you could just play this button and see our app for this horizontal layout of our box layout. So next thing is using the kivy language, and basically in order to achieve this same layout using the kivy language, that should be covered in the next lecture. So next lecture would be the important lecture, so don't miss that out, and see you in the next one.